Καλημέρα σας από το Φόρουμ των Δελφών. Έχουμε τη χαρά να φιλοξενούμε σήμερα τον Εκτελεστικό Αντιπρόεδρο της Ευρωπαϊκής Επιτροπής, τον κύριο Βάλντις Ντομπρόφσκις. Mr. Executive Vice President, thank you for being with us at Kappa News.
Good morning.
Well, we have a few questions. We've seen recently a surge in inflation data across almost all European Union countries. Now there is a dilemma in fiscal policy in many governments by trying to support the livelihoods of people, especially people who can't afford to pay their bills. But on the other hand, there is a dilemma of possible feeding a vicious cycle of inflation. What would be the ideal fiscal policy mix right now under these very unusual circumstances?
First of all, indeed, we are facing the situation of rapidly increasing inflation, but this is mainly driven by energy prices. Of course, we start now to see some pass-through of this inflation from energy prices to other sectors. We also have effects on a global food crisis stemming from Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So it's important to address the issue, so to say, the source of the issue, which primarily is energy. And that's why from European Commission side, we came with a number of suggestions what member states can do in a short term to alleviate the burden on households and businesses of high energy prices. What can be done to strengthen our resilience and diversify supplies, including like a joint procurement of natural gas, certain obligations on fulfilling the storages to avoid some kind of market manipulations. And we are looking at the functioning of the energy markets, the market price setting mechanisms, whether some adjustments are needed there. So it's important to address the root causes of the inflation to be able to address it effectively, because indeed, as you rightly noted, if one would just try to react to it by providing additional fiscal stimulus, one indeed can come in some kind of a wage inflation spiral, which we should be avoiding.
In a recent European Council in Versailles, the European leaders decided not to impose any sanctions on the Russian energy sector. But the new fifth wave of European sanctions are starting to affect also the Russian coal, and maybe in the future we could see some other sectors of Russian energy being affected. Do you see any danger, mid or short or mid-term, for cutting off supplies from Russia? And what European countries can do to offset those risks?
Well, clearly, what Russia's aggression against Ukraine has demonstrated that we cannot rely on energy supplies from a partner who is openly threatening us. That's indeed why in the fifth sanctions package, there was a decision to ban Russia's coal imports. The discussions are now ongoing on oil. Of course, there are discussions also about natural gas. It must be said that one way or another, we will be phasing out from Russia's hydrocarbon supplies. If we look at the European Commission's Repower EU communication, which we published several weeks ago, it outlines how we can reduce our dependence on Russian gas imports by 2/3 already by the end of this year, and we can also phase out other Russia's energy imports. It must be said that strategically, the direction we are following is a direction which was set already in the European Green Deal, because European Green Deal was foreseeing that we are gradually moving away from fossil fuels. Of course, current situation adds urgency, and there are a number of steps which we need to take immediately. And in terms of mitigating the impact, we are now working very intensively to diversify supply sources of energy resources, because that's what we can do in a short term.
Well, in past years, you personally, Mr. Vice President, have worked extensively to create new dimensions to the European trade agreements with various countries around the world. Now we face a new era of sanctions, and some analysts suggest that we may be facing the end of globalization of international trade as we have known it in the last decades. Do you see any danger of globalization being reversed?
Well, the rules-based multilateral trading system has served European Union well, and we believe it has served the world well. So we are committed to preserve this rules-based multilateral trading system. Of course, for this we need also the reform of the World Trade Organization, because there is no denial that WTO is in crisis and was in crisis even before war in Ukraine. Clearly responding to Russia's aggression, we have put sanctions, and many like-minded partners across the globe have put sanctions against Russia. So we need to mitigate the disruptions of the supply chains which are coming from our sanctions, from Russia's counter-sanctions. But for this, actually, our global network of the free trade agreements which European Union can add to the resilience of the economy, because it allows us to diversify also the sourcing of raw materials. That's why we're looking how we can best use the potential of existing free trade agreements, and also how we can accelerate the work in a targeted way towards new free trade agreements, where we have negotiations on different stages, or some are already heading towards a process of ratification. So to use this network of free trade agreements to diversify the supply sources.
Well, Mr. Executive Vice President, we thank you very much for being with us at Kappa News and wish you the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.